After numerous run-ins with the police and an abundance of drama, they were finally able to take action against the individual in question. With a smile, she knocked on the door and handed over a single piece of paper that would alter everything. For years, Emily Swanson and her spouse had been saving up every penny so that one day they could move to Hawaii. After being careful financially, they could finally afford to rent a beautiful 5-bedroom oceanfront house. They felt that they were finally living their dream until they met their neighbor. The first explosion happened after Emily and her husband threw away an old playset. Tanya, a robust woman with an unhealthy fondness for leopard print and profanity t-shirts, stormed over and bellowed that they had no right to take away her children's toys. Emily restrained her fury and calmly reminded her of two very important facts. The set was on their property and the landlord allowed it, and they may have been over the property line, but at least the kids could play as long as they respected the property. Emily did not like this woman. Then she heard the loud music. So when the woman took advantage of their hospitality by having a huge family party in their space, Emily couldn't believe it. The neighbor ordered her to stay inside as it was a family-only gathering. Then something happened that made Emily's blood boil. Emily and her husband took refuge in their living room while the party raged outside. That is, until one of the drunk next-door guests stumbled inside of their house. Emily tried to explain to the guest that this wasn't her neighbor's house. The guest then replied, Tanya said she owned the whole property and to use whichever bathroom. Emily couldn't believe it. Then her neighbor came inside too. Emily saw the movement of animal print clothing and the smell of cheap perfume. Shouting about how Emily could make a fool out of her in front of her guests, she continued to tell them that they didn't need all of the space to themselves. Emily's blood was boiling. Tanya needed to learn a lesson. Since the couple was spending some money, they thought they might also update the outside area by installing a fire pit and a beautiful patio kitchen. The whole project was pretty expensive, but it created a beautiful outdoor atmosphere. Then she heard Tanya walking right up to her patio. Tanya looked at Emily and demanded she tell her what was going on. Emily thought that she would tell her about the renovations to her patio. As soon as Tanya was informed about the home renovation project, she started salivating in anticipation. She was already planning her next gathering on Emily's turf, but Emily wasn't as naive as she may have looked, and she hid her smile as she walked away. What Emily didn't tell Tanya was that the renovations also included a secure fence around the patio. When Tanya found out, she couldn't believe it. This started a war that Emily was happy to play a part in. Then Billy arrived. Billy was Tanya's boyfriend. He immediately began to throw his cigarette butts and beer cans over the fence and into Emily's yard for disrespecting his woman. He and Tanya became true neighbors from the underworld, having loud arguments and parties at all hours of the night. Billy was obviously on Tanya's side about the fence fiasco, and Billy also had a boat. It was a 30-foot fishing boat, to be precise. The only problem was that Tanya's side of the property was only allocated 15 feet of dockage. Emily's side of the property, as the larger and more expensive side of the duplex, was blessed with around 150 feet of docking space. To make some extra money, Emily and her husband would rent the extra docking spaces that they didn't need on a month-to-month basis, and renters would tie up their boats on their property line. So what did Billy and Tanya decide to do? One day, Emily was perplexed to find that someone had left a nasty review for her on the site that they used to rent out the docking spaces. The disgruntled customer said that Emily and her husband were rude and had not honored a verbal agreement to let them use the space for 3 more months. After a phone call, Emily quickly put 2 and 2 together. Emily was furious. The next-door couple had posed as her and her husband while they were out of town, had rudely told the renter to remove their boat, and had audaciously parked Billy's fishing boat in the space. Unbelievable. Emily wasted no time. Now it was her turn to call the cops. The situation was getting well out of hand. The cops ordered Tanya and Billy to move the boat immediately, or it would be towed. Tanya and Billy began to scream that the boat is on their property and that Emily was a liar. Then they switched tactics and screamed that nobody could own the water. After this final incident, Emily vowed to get payback, and she didn't care if it took years to get it. It was supposed to be years of blissful mornings with fruit salad and watching the ocean. Instead, cigarette butts and other garbage were tossed over regularly. Weekly parties became louder and louder, and Tanya's horrible children's new favorite pastime was throwing lit fireworks at her boat. Emily felt helpless, but karma was waiting just around the corner. Months turned into years, and the police eventually knew their address by heart because it was the horrible neighbor's main ammunition. Emily turned despondent as her heavenly paradise turned sour and rotten. She had just about given up on her dreams and even considered moving just to get away from it all. But then, fate stepped in. It didn't matter that the police sided with Emily every single time. Each financial installment in their rent-to-own property felt more like a devastating investment into misery. Sickening stress was now a constant in their life. She was on the verge of giving up altogether when the landlord suddenly offered a very interesting opportunity. The housing market was insane, and the old man was tired of being a landlord, especially to the crazy girl that never shuts her pie hole. Emily's jaw dropped to the ground as he offered the wonderful, utterly magical solution to all of her problems. Fruit salad and tranquility would be in her future again. The old man was desperate to sell the other half of the duplex and wanted to give the first chance to Emily and her husband. She felt a new surge of joy swell in her heart at the idea. It was extra great because she would be able to move her aging parents in beside them. It didn't take long for the paperwork to go through and the final plan to unfold. They weren't idiots. Before the glorious day, they made an LLC and confirmed the end of lease was soon, as well as had the notice papers ready. It was with immeasurable pleasure she knocked on Leopard Lady's door, handed over the notice, and asked for the rent. But that wasn't the best part. It turned out the wretched neighbor had just moved her mother in. The old woman wasn't just mortified at her daughter's behavior, she repeatedly and sincerely apologized for everything that had happened over the years. "I didn't raise my daughter to act like this kind of maniac." Leopard Lady turned beet red with rage and embarrassment. It was an alliance Emily would have never imagined. Not only did Tanya's mother help keep the peace, but she also ended up being very pleasant company. Every Wednesday evening, Emily and the woman had drinks and baked, and each time Tanya blistered in silent anger. But one thing held true. Emily and her husband weren't malicious people. She was more than happy to let them stay at base necessity rent until they managed to find a new home. Part of her was going to miss the old woman and their sweet but very brief friendship. She was the neighbor she had dreamed of the entire time. Emily felt as if she had found a second mother, and the feeling was mutual. The elderly woman felt that she was the type of woman she wished Tanya would aspire to be. But never in her wildest dreams did Emily imagine that she would share such a strong bond with her pesky neighbor's mother. It was a long road to get from where she had been to where she was now, but her time was finally here. She could feel a change in the air. There was nothing in her way anymore, not even a single piece of litter in her yard. In the end, the house was finally cleared out and the moving truck sped away. A final, spiteful, yet humorous letter remained in her mailbox, written on animal print paper, no less. Now, Emily could finally relax. It was time to savor their piece of paradise.